All right. Well, welcome everyone. I'm Jennifer Britton, and it's great to be back for one of our bi-weekly community calls. It is May 6th, 2025. So maybe you're seeing this in 2025, or it could be 10 years down the road. You just never know. But this is part of our spring 2025 hot topics and group and team coaching call. Got a few of you live today. Want to say hi to Mary Garrett. Good to have you with us. Also, Ivana, my partner in crime with our podcast, is here. And today is the day that we get to look at our fifth topic out of the sixth series, which is AI and coaching. And today is all about elevating your impact in minutes, not months. So here's a little backstory. Really like to bring the backstory to the front story. As I was sharing with Mary Garrett a few minutes ago, I left one of my power cords for one computer at home on the weekend. So I've been working with half a system. And in working with half a system, it's been interesting to see what did I need to recreate. So I had to recreate this entire deck. And so what did I do? I actually went to ChatGPT, and ChatGPT gave me that snappy little title of AI and coaching, elevate your impact in minutes, not months. And so really it helped me recreate what I had planned to do today, but couldn't access on the computer that has gone to sleep until the power cord comes. So it is also going to be a sneak peek into next week's AI Empowered Coach and Solopreneur Booster Day. So if you are not familiar with our work here at Potentials Realized, we offer award-winning group and team coaching training, as well as supports for coaches to grow their business, both under the Coaching Business Builder brand and also through our related quarterly booster days. So we do June and December are coaching business boosters. And then earlier this year in February, I did the memorability booster from Barbados. And next week in May, we'll be doing our AI booster day, which is a day to learn more about AI, but more importantly, to roll up your sleeves and actually to leave the day with some pretty tangible things in hand. So this is part of a longer series. We have one more in our series in 2 weeks on the 20th of May. That topic, hot topic, is going to be change, coaching and change. And I'm really looking forward to bringing that to the table. But one of the reasons we're having so much change right now is just how AI is, I would say, disrupting and enabling new environments. So before I go any further, I'd love to just, because we've got Ivana on the line, Mary Garrett, if you're open to this, what's important about this topic of AI for you as a coach and or a business owner right now? What's the important piece for you? Does it help? Are you using it? Are you curious about it? Ivana, you and I sat down recently on our episode 24, I think, at the
Yeah.
Coaching Many podcast. So yeah, what's important in May 2025 for you around AI and coaching?
Well, what's important for me is that balance wheel of using it. I think you really kind of stated it subtly at the front end is like, how can we use it so it's helping us, like enabling us, versus recognizing how the use of it can also be kryptonite. It can actually, I find that I dance in that with AI. It's like I can easily find myself going down a rabbit hole with it. And so for me, what's important is, really starting to identify like for myself, but also like some of the best practices of what can AI actually support us with?
Yeah.
And where is it that we need to tap into our own innovation, our own inner knowing, our own wisdom, and leave that behind? Because we are humans and our brands are humans,
Yeah.
but there's also a time and place for it.
Absolutely. And I think, we as a company really stand for the counterpoint to AI, but it doesn't mean that we reject AI. In
Yeah.
fact, I think as an organization, we recognize, we are always about what's going to happen in the future, and the future is AI. And at the same time, how do we enable AI, partner with AI, but also ensure the human element of our work? And that is the coaching, that is the deep, deep trust that happens within a group as well. So I love that. Thanks, Ivana. And how about you, Mary Garrett? What's important for you today?
I think that AI has a lot of possibilities of things that help us be more efficient. I've used it primarily, and I've used Perplexity primarily because it gives you your original sources for building training, citations,
Hmm.
writing. Um, so because I want to make sure that what I'm using has the original citations, and then I can go to the articles and dive deeper. So it's really helped me in that way. I think it helps me to be a more conversational writer because I'm more of an academic writer. And so I'm trying to figure out a conversational voice, but that's mine, right? So
Yeah.
I think of AI as like a suggestion or a way, thinking partner for me.
Mhm.
Mm,
Am really interested in exploring other ways I can use it to be more efficient. I think there are issues about client confidentiality. I don't, like there's all sorts of issues around that, like how is it learning,
Yes.
or client resources. But I think it's right, like how do you hold your own integrity, your own voice, your own unique
yeah.
who-ness and use AI.
Yeah.
And it is here and it has lots of possibilities. And so I'm really looking forward to next week, the sprint, because I have an idea of how I want to use it, but I'm really looking forward to learning with others what they're doing.
Yeah. And I think it's like, we are in one of these next incremental moments of humanity where it's like we are in a window of opportunity. So if people are sitting on the fence, like now is the time to come learn with and from each other, experiment. Because I think specifically as solopreneurs, right? And this is why I'm calling this whole brand the AI empowered, because we are being empowered by it, but we're also being powered by it. And as a one person show or a very small business, like a micro business, it allows us to do stuff that bigger businesses may be doing, but with lots of people. And so again, I think that's a strategic advantage. So again, thank you, Mary Garrett, for talking about the May 13th Booster Day. We're going to have fun. We're going to have 5 hours together next Tuesday to look at sort of three key areas. So, part of our booster day, and this has evolved over time, is to give coaches, professionals a space to pause, getting clear on what's going on, to focus. And our focus next week will be on the focus of AI. What is important right now in this moment? And then to move into a cycle of creating. So, generating options, possibilities, actually rolling up our sleeves and doing the work so that you're able to activate and move more into that aligned, sustainable action. And this pause, focus, create, activate is a newer model, but I've been using it, but now it's under the Conversation Sparker brand. And so I'm trying to link everything we do with it because it is at the heart of our work. This is where we're going next week. So Mary Garrett, myself, others are going to be looking at content creation, our systems, our business systems and productivity. And then we'll also be doing some work around creativity and innovation because I think from a creator's standpoint, there is so much possibility of how we can harness AI as a thinking partner, as you've said, Mary Garrett, as a creative collaborator as well, especially for someone like me, right? Like I'm a word artist, I'm an author, but for the visual element, AI can create so many amazing things. And I just think about where it's gone in the last year. I was sharing
Mhm.
this a few days ago with someone else, and it was only last summer that I was working from this same office space, building out a couple of card decks. A year ago, we would have to go into a whole other AI specialization, i.e., Mid-Journey, to create graphics that are now available to us in a paid Chat GPT version. So it's really amazing to think about how AI is also changing very quickly in making things easier and more systematized. Along though with what you also raised, Mary Garrett, is like doing the due diligence. So recently, this week, Monday, I put up a post on LinkedIn because the one weird thing that I found very strange about GPTs early on was that like every time I read about group coaching, I could tell when people had their posts on group coaching, it sounded like me. And I started to think, is this like was it not my work? And I found out a few months ago that my first two books were scraped by the Meta AI, and all of that has gone into the ecosystem of training, and that very visible thing has now unleashed a whole series of legal issues around authorship with traditional publishers. And it was only the traditional publishing books that got into the AI ecosystem, which is fascinating. Aside, what that has meant is, really me looking at, okay, do I then use the GPTs? Do I feed into it? But, creation is creation. And I think there's real opportunity now to innovate, but you need to do your fact check. Like, I think that is the key. So fact check, fact check. Why it matters now is because there's consistent, like whether we call it pressure or not, but like with so much volume coming out into the world, if we consider ourselves to be a content creator, we've got to do it more. We've got to do it bigger. We've got to do it bolder. And so more is not always like, I think bold is just as good as more. And what I get excited by are things like the GPT visual elements. You know how much I love visuals. And so invitation, if you have the paid version of 4.0, are you using that to just spark some new ideas that you might take to a human designer, or you might go into a specialized service like Midjourney? Really, for us as business owners, whether we're using visuals or not, it helps to accelerate, it helps to personalize and simplify. So as a coach specifically, which is what I'm going to focus on today, we're always creating new stuff. Many of you, like Mary Garrett, you mentioned it, we may be asked to create a module on emotional intelligence. It may be something that we've been doing for 20 years. How can that be repurposed in a way that maybe we aren't seeing? And so choice of the business owner. What are you feeding into AI, knowing that anything you feed in may be used, not only for you, but for a much wider system. But I think it is interesting to take older material, like for me, having done things like the Teams 365 blog, which ran for 11 years. That's over like 3,600 posts of my content. I can now take some of that to AI and go, can you synthesize this for me? And it becomes a whole new piece of work. And that allows me to work smarter, not harder, right? Yeah, I could, do it myself, but do I have time? It's easier to have the draft of the synthesis and springboard from there. And so I think this is a real opportunity. And we do want to look at it through the coaching landscape. So I don't have the book with me, but there's a really great book that was launched only about 2 months ago. Early March, I went to a one-day conference for the AI and digital handbook for coaches. And that was produced out of the UK. It has amazing case studies talking about organizations as diverse as Ezra and BetterUp to smaller practitioners and how they're using AI in coaching. Note, as they noted back in March, already in book format, right? It was out of date, right? Information and data and knowledge is changing so rapidly. But for us as coaches, it is really important to think about how are we maintaining things like our ethical frames, confidentiality. Are we using it as a partner, as a thinking partner? Because we don't always have someone in our office next door that we could be working with. Are we doing a co-creation? Are we using it to brainstorm? And when I was doing the rework of this PowerPoint today, I found it so funny, which is why I used it with this elevate your impact in minutes, not months, because I only had 30 minutes this morning to reinvigorate this. I could remember some, but I couldn't remember what I'd created last Friday. So there are a couple of key cases that I think we can look at it, and this is what we're going to be doing next week in the booster: content creation, productivity, and innovation. And I think if you think about your business right now, like what is important? Is it about getting the word out through visual, through auditory, through written channels? Is it looking at the systems, right? Like I think when we are establishing businesses and scaling businesses, thinking about our systems is really, really key. And then there's the innovation factor. How does it get us thinking differently? So I want to pause here and just see, as we've thought about these different angles so far, we've got about half of our call left. What is important for us to spend some time on in this remaining half a call, i.e. 12 to 15 minutes? Because I've shared a lot. I've been like, blah. What's important for you to look at right now as a business owner?
If I may go, just because Mary Garrett's on mute, in you sharing what you've shared, I don't have the paid version of ChatGPT, and thank you for sharing about Mid-Journey. I kind of feel like I'm in a bubble over here in Italy, and thank you, Mary Garrett, because I also made note of Perplexity because it speaks to the integrity as coaches, and yes, there's a layer of innovation and creation, but there's also a layer of honoring intellectual property like Jennifer, yours when we're working with AI. But what's really coming center to me is like how the experimentation that can be like I'm really playing with ChatGPT. Even I created a poster, a visual for a new product I'm offering in Italy, and the first iteration, it took me weeks. And on the second iteration, using ChatGPT, kind of giving it some ideas, it created
Mhm.
a visual that literally my turnaround time went from weeks to a day.
Yeah. Hmm.
So I think it's kind of like I love what Mary Garrett said, and you said it too, Jen. It's like it's that co-partner. Like, how can we use it as a co-create, not without it being a dependency,
Yes.
but really that co-creation. And for me, I would love to have more conversation around, I think everyone knows ChatGPT, and it's a great resource, but maybe like in terms of these three buckets, are
Hmm.
there other AI tools that can help? And I also
Hmm.
just want to name something that you did before you hit the recording. It's like, I'm very present that not all AI is actually valuable. Like the chat bots that you always very clearly state, like as much as it's I think as a coach, we need to be super selective, whether it's because of our ethics or our confidentiality is, are we turning these things on or off? I think there's also that in the conversation, which I imagine is part of your bigger conversation around AI.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you bring up the whole confidentiality because as much as we can use it, what are we not using it for? And it
Yeah.
like to the confidentiality, I think that was a really key message that came out of this March conference was you can work within it. However, I would say as just to keep it really crystal clear,
Mm.
it's like luckily I have never migrated to a lot, except in certain instances like mentor coaching. That would be the only time I would ever do notes of a call on a computer. Everything else is non-computerized just because way, 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 way years ago it was drilled into me as a coach. It's like you don't take notes. You just don't take notes. If you're ever subpoenaed, you just you don't have notes. It's just like that's it. That's all. That's
Yeah.
that's it. And I just think, even the experts are not really quite clear what is happening with things. And so it's just whether it's black or white, but many platforms have things built into it as well. So what depending on the platform you're using. So Mary Garrett, I sort of saw your hand go up, or was that a
Well,
comment?
so I think I love these three buckets, and I think what will come up is ethics, right? It's
Hmm.
going to come up across the board.
Yeah.
So I almost feel
Hmm.
like that needs like its own bucket
Yeah.
because it's really important to think about. And I was thinking too, Jennifer, I love that you had Canva because I use Canva, but everything is going AI. And
Mhm.
so, like, the learning curve is really high. Like,
Yeah.
Zoom keeps trying to transcribe my coaching sessions. I'm not allowing it to. Like, if my
Yes.
coachee wanted it, I would do it for them, but I don't want them taking all that data
Yeah,
or
exactly.
anything personal.
Hmm.
But like I just started having to pay more for Google Workspace because they added Gemini and then Zoom's added it and then Canva's adding it. But it's
Yep.
like everything I look at and I don't really know how to use them. So there is also this learning curve on what you're going to use and what you're not going to use. I don't
Yes.
know that we'll have time for that on the sprint, but
Yeah.
I I think it's there's a little bit of even if you're using it, there's a little bit of overwhelm because now everything is putting it in. Adobe
And
recommends.
it's everywhere. And even, like, so I'm a Word user, right? And one of the reasons why this laptop, I have two laptops now because I don't actually do writing on one of my laptop systems because I've actually stopped the scrubbing. Any Microsoft product now has automatic,
Copilot. Yeah.
yeah, Copilot into the ecosystem. So one of my systems does not have it, one of it has it. And as a creator, right, it's like, what is your intellectual property?
Wow.
It is the gold. And so it automatically feeds into Copilot, automatically feeds and reads everything
But that
unless you
in and of
deactivate it.
itself, Jen, that in and of itself is a very powerful message for me who am playing with content. Like, you being the maven, you having written, I'm lost count of how many books. I know one is like a proposals in, like the ethics, but also our own integrity to our own body of work, whether it be our books, our articles, whatever. Like that, what
Yeah.
you just said to me is like, wow, Ivana, like as soon as you said that, I was like, I got to go look at my Mac to see what
What
is
is
actually
enabled?
running and not running because I want to make sure that,
Yeah.
you know,
And again, we don't know, but we don't know. You don't know what you don't
oh,
know. And it's like, it's a very easy, and I know you like to write by hand, there's probably some real safety in that as a creator, right? Because what is the value of the content creation? I think as I put in this LinkedIn post this week, coaches need to be very careful with whose content are you now sharing, if that's all you
mhm,
do. Whose voice is it? Because different countries too have different copyright laws, and this whole use of creative works is revolving around what is known as fair use. Fair use in the US is different than the UK, and it's different than Canada. So we have to be very careful with that. And again, not to dissuade, but it's just to use it in a way that we can think about it. So yeah, three tools to try, right? Chat GPT, everyone's really familiar with it. Note though that on a paid version, there are more guardrails currently up, which may change in the future around what happens to your content. But you may really be wanting to do some more exploration. We're going to be talking about this a lot next week around prompts. Even creating good prompts. I'll be sharing some core documents that inevitably will change within a few months. But how do you create good prompts? Because it's sort of garbage in, garbage out. That's what we used to say in the 80s, right? You put garbage into a computer, you get garbage out. And I think about, you know, um, and this dates me, obviously, but the first years of word processors. And as a student, going as an undergrad student from like typewriter to a master's student as with my Mac, my first and only Mac. And but there was a huge learning curve, right? Like huge, huge. So what are we doing and how are we trying it out? So Mary Garrett, you mentioned the Canva, right? Experiment with the visuals, the carousels, the slides. There's so much. You can go in and you have 500 credits a month around actually creating visuals with prompts that you can build upon, which is sort of neat. I don't use it only because it seems very complicated, but my son uses it. Notion, right? Notion is sort of like an ecosystem where you can do journaling. To me, it sort of is like an Evernote 2025, but it's Notion and it has AI functionality. Even websites, right? Wix has Wix AI. GoDaddy, you can now design through AI. So it does allow us, but to ethics and coaching in AI, right? AI is a tool. AI is not the coach. But what is interesting, and I saw this last week, I should have tried to pull it, but Andrea J. Lee, who I really love her writing, she wrote um, Multiple Streams of Coaching Income in 2005. And so Andrea is an author. She found a graphic which showed on sort of a top 10 where people were going to AI for what use. And counseling and coaching has gone towards the top. So, it's a tool. It's not a coach. It's not a human. I think, again, we bring the opportunity if it's a human first. We can't at this moment recreate a group process with just AIs, right? But we want the human connection. But we do need to really look at confidentiality, consent, and boundaries. And I know I've had to, even in the last 6 weeks, take a really hard stand where I had a client in a group say, can we transcribe? And I put it out to the group and I said, I personally, as a coach, don't feel comfortable with that. Because while one person agrees, what about the other six of you? Right? And we all agreed we're just not doing it, even though they work in tech and we can do it safely. I said, but we can't all agree to consent. So these are really key issues that are going to face coaches, big and small. And you need to be clear on what your boundary is because we're holding confidentiality. I would say because it's also relatively new in the last 1 to 2 months, the new updated code of ethics, which now speaks to AI. So if you haven't watched the ICF Global ethics conversation, take a look at that and you'll see it. So we won't have time to do many demos, but next week at the booster, we're going to be looking at drafting content. We're going to be looking at personalizing a proposal and maybe even brainstorming a new coaching product. And those are all mini experiments that you could try. I think, feedback is this is a game changer. I'm going to zoom into that second one because I think as solopreneurs, it can be even as seasoned solopreneurs, and both of you are seasoned, like there is so much that we have to do in a day. And that is a have to, right? Like either we farm it out or we do it ourselves. And I think AI can be a game changer within the boundaries. It frees up so much time. Realizing yesterday that I wasn't going to have a cord on that one laptop, I was like, oh no. But then I realized I can probably do something. I could probably whittle something together this morning in one bit of a time. So could you create a quarter's worth of content in under 2 hours? Could you do 90 days of content? I bet you could, because just last December at Ivana, I think you were with me at the December booster. We did content creation in about 90 minutes as a human. People weren't using AI at that time. I think we could go through the same process in 90 minutes, and probably in the June coaching business booster, people will actually leave with content written, graphics done, which is a huge game changer. Because if we can get that done as a draft, we can then spend hours on review, but then we can spend the time on coaching and not try to like work 18-hour days to get it all in. So to me, that's like a big piece. So join us at the booster next week. We're going to be doing content systems innovation, some demos. You're going to be working on it because it is sprint times. I'm going to be bringing prompt banks and templates that you might want to use. And hopefully everyone is going to leave with not a 90-day, but a 30-day action plan because the world is changing. So that is it. And interesting, we're right at 12:30. Usually I go a little bit longer. So I just want to see what is this conversation sparking you to think about or do as a business owner or as a coach this week. Let's bring it down to this week. What's something you want to do?
I want to prepare for next week for the sprint. So this was really helpful just to have a better frame.
Mm-hmm.
And I also want to give you all kudos at Potentials Realize, Jennifer and Ivana, because your website is greatly improved. You did a great job, and your newsletters are a lot better. So the tools that you're using,
Nice.
yeah.
Okay. Well, I love hearing that. Thank you. And Ivana.
For me, it's looking at what my Mac is doing, the back end scrub. It's really, I think what's really activated in me is the ethics piece. I'm not concerned about the confidentiality because I'm always front and center, but I think there's layers to this. And also spreading my resources. Like as much as Canva does images, maybe I need to look at Midjourney,
Yeah.
like looking at diversifying my AI resources. And also I want to look at more closely the booster because I haven't signed up, but this call has gotten me definitely curious around the prompts and all that stuff, like how to maximize it. So
And really, you know, I would say for people in those three buckets, if you're looking to really evolve your content, if you're really thinking about systems, because we're going to spend some time on our coaching business systems, and then a little bit on the innovation. So with the booster, there'll be content and doing, content and doing. And we're going to have a good like 2 hour chunk where there'll be the option to do some peer work, but also like really roll up your sleeves to to leave with something, because it is a day to just get it done and get it
Mm.
started. Well, thanks for being here. And I'll see you, Mary Garrett, next week. If anyone wants to register, fastest way, head on over to groupcoachingessentials.ca. I'm going to move the booster. I don't think it's there, but I'll move it to the right-hand side, the little graphic for that. And I'll put it in a YouTube link. So we're back in 2 weeks for our last spring 2025 call, which will be on the hot topic of change, which is everywhere, of course, right now.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Amazing.
Bye.
Thank you
Have
so
a good
much.
one. Good to
Bye.
see everyone.